All right, Locker Room Philosophers. I am here today with my co-host Mike D.
Yo, yo.
And we're back. All right, so we're gonna start this episode off with a new segment that we're gonna be doing weekly. It's gonna be lessons from the mat. So both of us train jiu-jitsu at Assembly Jiu-Jitsu, the best jiu-jitsu school in the Metro Detroit area, possibly the state. That's up for debate. We'll see.
And the Midwest.
All right, bold claims, bold claims. This is not sponsored by Assembly. Garmo is not paying us to say this. These are our actual opinions. So, Lessons from the Mat is a new segment we're going to be doing where we discuss exactly that, what lessons we have learned from the mats that week. So, Mike, what did you learn at training?
So lessons from the mat. So this one of the lessons that stood out to me was based on, it was actually a note that I made from last week's training. It was based on movement through the position that we are working. And the lesson that I learned was the emphasis on slow and intentional. So an inch by inch, position over submission, grinding out the position, and being slow and intentional with the movement as opposed to just going through the movement and thinking submission before you get the control or before you get the position itself. So for me, that was a big, like kind of something that I made note of because it's something that I want to really focus on through, my practice of jiu-jitsu. And I feel that especially for me and my lack of technical jiu-jitsu skill, I think position and control is going to be super important for me to gain and keep a hold of before I start to move on and think about submission. So that was the lesson for me. And then, thinking about how does that apply to life? So, slow and intentional, or just being intentional in general, inch by inch, how do we get better? Sometimes it's, 1% every day type of thing. So I was just kind of thinking hey, this is also something in life that, being intentional, sometimes slow, meaning, not being overwhelmed by the end goal or what you're trying to accomplish and just trying to get, sometimes you'll get overwhelmed by trying to do everything to accomplish something, where it's take a step back, go slow, inch by inch, get better little by little every day, and stack up those small wins. And I feel like that kind of, fits both. It was like a lesson on the mat for my jiu-jitsu game, but then it was also something in life. It's like a reminder just to, sometimes it's good to take things slow and, really make sure that you're controlling and gaining position inch by inch and not just kind of jumping in and, going all out without having, some kind of control, some kind of, I feel like sometimes when we do things that that require a lot of intention, sometimes it's like we lose that intention and we start to get overwhelmed by the process. So it's and it's okay, well, I want this thing to happen, and everything that happens in between is super important. And I feel like that, a lot of times that goes by the wayside, and some people lose sight of that because it's, after you start doing something, it starts to get stagnant possibly, or
Or they feel like it's daunting when their goals are too far out in the future. If you're not breaking up your goals in terms of short term, long term, and the immediate, then yeah, you can get kind of intimidated, especially in something like jiu-jitsu where it can take 10 plus years of consistent 3 or 4 plus times a week training to become a black belt. And then from every black belt I've ever known, they say that when you reach black belt, you're just starting to learn again. So it's a lifelong journey. And if you look at things in general as a lifelong journey, that can obviously be intimidating. So what do you think in terms of breaking up goals into immediate, short-term, and then long-term goals?
Yeah, so with goals,
Or just not even goals, but progress, looking at progress as immediate, short-term, and long-term.
so progress, Yeah, with progress, it's about, so a lot of it too is going to come with, sometimes it's hard to see your own progress in some ways. So I think when I'm trying to check how my progress is going on whatever I'm doing, first, I believe the consistency part is huge on anything that you're doing, because if you're consistent and you're intentionally going in there trying to get better, the consistency alone, I think, will help with the progress. So whether that, depending on the person, depending on, like you said, if you're training 2 to 3 times a week, or if you're training 4 to 5 or 6 or whatever that number is going to be a little bit different. So the progress is going to be different, from each person, on top of their skill set and everything. So for progress, I think that the short-term progress for me, it's like just be consistent, show up, train, if we're talking jiu-jitsu, show up and train, and, don't be like, I don't want to get overly concerned with something that's long-term that I know, like, okay, so for me, would love to be a black belt eventually, right? So being a black belt in jiu-jitsu would be fantastic, awesome. And obviously if something that I want to train in for the rest of my life. So eventually I would love to be there, but it's also something that I'm not really, at this point in my life, it's not like a goal that I'm really, it's something that's going to happen by me being consistent, showing up and training consistently for X amount of years, right? So it's like that path to mastery. I think that sometimes people are more concerned about, can I get a black belt in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years? I don't know if that really matters as much as it is like, okay, because, you're going to know the truth. So it's like, if you get it in 5 years, fantastic. It's amazing. And obviously you might be, a high level grappler, competitor. I mean, there's going to be things that are allowing you to get it in 5 years, but that doesn't mean that let's say somebody starts jiu-jitsu and they're 50 years old. So is getting a black belt out of the question for them? No. I mean, I see people, getting promoted in their 60s, in their 70s even. So I think, like, depending on what the thing is for the goals or for the progress, really for me, it's more about consistency. But then also the goal itself is great to have something to aim for. But then your goals might also change, like, so not being super rigid because, things happen. We were just kind of talking about that earlier. Things happen to where that path, there's something might change to where, that goal might change. It might be pushed off a little bit because of life circumstances, events or whatnot, or something in your life might change the way that you're approaching it or what you desire. So I think the goal is great just to have, some kind of structure and something to aim for. But I'm not really like a long-term, like, okay, here's my 10-year, 20-year goal. Because, I mean, I've, been around to know that a lot can happen that could, kind of alter those plans. But so at the same time, it's like, have these things in your mind because you want something to strive and work towards. But then it's about every day, little by little progress. Show up, be consistent, because all I can control is right now, right? So like today, I was able to go train jiu-jitsu. I can control that. I showed up, went, trained, tried to get better. Today's move definitely showed me that I'm not getting better in today's move. But it's just like, I'm showing up, I'm training, and then tomorrow's the next day. Show up and train if I can. So it's just, I look at it more as like a consistent thing, being consistent as opposed to trying to look too far out.
And do you carry that same mentality for your business growth?
Yep, I do. Because, 10 years, again, like I'll have an idea, right? I'll have a map. I do a lot of like brainstorming and mapping, and so I have something that I see that I want, right? Some kind of direction I want to take it, whether it's so in the business, something company related, something sales related. So whatever that is, I'll have an idea. But when I'm pushing it further out than like a year, really, that's where it gets to where, I have these goals or these, benchmarks, but at the same time, they're not set in stone. So all I can control is right now, planning my business for the right now, for this year, for today, tomorrow, the week, the month, and the year. And then at the end of the year, you do it like an end of the year review, prep for the next year. Okay, what can I control this coming up year? But then thinking like 3, 4, 5 years out, 10 years out, again, it's not that it's a bad thing to do, but I just that's more like a loose kind of thing, right? Like I just kind of have some ideas, have some directions where I want to go, but it's just never really the main focus. It's always, for me, it's always like right now, within like the year or two
Okay.
is my primary focus.
Gotcha.
How about you?
So, if I'm being completely honest with our locker room philosophers out there, in the last couple weeks, I have not been training like I should have been, partially because I'm a wuss, but also I am kind of battling some injuries right now. Got my butt kicked in a competition on the 28th and injured my shoulder and got my foot popped. And then, so the left foot got popped, but then the right leg had been all bruised up. And then all of a sudden I got what turned out to be a large hematoma on my right leg. But my wife thought it was a blood clot. Anyways, I haven't been training for the last couple weeks because I was kind of babying some injuries a little bit. And the lesson I've learned is, obviously today my cardio was not good. I also learned that a hematoma, if you just get kicked by Mike Dimitrievsky, the bump will disappear. So that was nice. It was also a little frustrating because I could have just trained last week. I was worried about the hematoma, which is just a bruise, but it looked like a lacrosse ball was sticking out of my leg. And I was worried about that like popping or something crazy happening. Anyways, didn't happen because Mike kicked me with his baby smooth legs. And so we're all good. But what I learned was that I need to be consistent and take some more risks. Like I was essentially just not training because I was worried about, hurting myself further. And you can always adjust your training to fit your current physical condition. So today I drilled and then I did 3 rounds, just flow rolled, didn't do anything too crazy because I don't want to get myself hurt, but it was good to get back in there, get the body moving, just get some rounds in with the boys and get those movement patterns back and learn. Like there was a lesson today that I was also not good at, some inversion stuff that I'm not an inverter, but just being in there, moving around, doing some jujitsu, that's always a good thing. And in life, you just got to start showing up. Like there's always going to be an excuse not to do something. Oh, my shoulder hurt in this case. Oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, I got a lacrosse ball sticking out of my leg. Okay, well, if you just show up and adjust your effort to what can be done that day and adjust the situation to what you're physically able to do that day and be transparent with those that you're going to have to do whatever you're going to do with. So in this case, rolling, like, hey, look, I'm beat up. Let's just flow roll. My right shoulder's messed up. Like I'm gonna tap early. Like Junior got me in an arm bar. I tapped really early because I didn't want my shoulder to get messed up even more than it is. So that can translate to life, because in life, if you're just transparent with people, let them know what's going on, people appreciate that transparency, but you still got to show up and put in the work. You're always going to find an excuse not to do that thing. So that's my lesson from the mat this week, is just kind of going along with what you said. Be consistent and don't give into those excuses in your head, because I've kind of been doing that and it obviously is not helping the progress that I'm trying to make. So,
well, to be fair though, so the ankle was probably the least. That one was, sore, but that one you could have probably taped and rolled through probably the next day, honestly, or maybe a couple of days after.
Yeah,
but the shoulder was kind of. You want to make sure at least it's, let the inflammation go down and So it's like one of those things where, we talked about a little bit before, when you were asking me like just longevity questions and stuff like that. So for me, the movement itself is important. So like, okay, so if I'm dealing with an injury, obviously first I want to figure out how severe it is, right? And then, if it's to a point, like if something's torn, and then even in that case, it depends on what it is, like how, tore that ligament in my finger, just buddy taped it and let's go. But certain things like, okay, your shoulder is obviously a big thing that you need to use, right? It's a very important, from a functional standpoint, you want your shoulder to work and you want it to be strong. And so I think, you had the competition, you had some injuries following the competition, the two ones that you knew of right away, the ankle and the shoulder. So let that calm down. So taking a few days off is not like something that's bad at all. And then at some point, the hematoma kind of like flared up and popped out of nowhere. So then your initial thing was like you said, you want to make sure it's not something serious. But then once you like check these boxes to see like, okay, you start to understand your body, see what's going on, and you realize like, okay, it's injured, or there's something that's tweaked, there's something going on, some inflammation. But then it's just like how injured, like what's going on, and then like how can you train around it, right? So it's not like, sometimes there's like the thing of training through it and training around it too. So training around it is doing what you did today. You're rolling, but you're not, you're letting people know, hey, I'm dealing with these injuries. Then there's the respect there that people are not going to just rip things, not that they would anyway, but they're going to approach it differently, right? They're not going to grind out on your shoulder necessarily, if your shoulder's bothering you. But then, with that, it's like you got to find that comfort spot in your own, like, okay, so for me, I know exactly, there's like a fine line where it's like I'm injured and I need rest, like a day or two off or whatever that amount is, or I'm injured, I can train, but in a limited way, right? So that might even be no rolling, but just drilling, right? It could even be maybe not even drilling and getting one of those like training dummies, that you can roll with, and then just kind of like just to move your body. So I think like even with injuries, even if you can't practice for that portion of time, whether it's like, okay, I need 2, 3, 4 days off from the mat, let's say, but can you do something that's still moving your body, right? So like if your shoulder's tweaked and you can't really raise it up over your head, can you go rucking? Can you put a rucksack on and just walk and, get your body engaged that way? So like for me, sometimes it's like the injuries, they're going to happen for sure, especially in that sport. But it's just figuring out like what's the injury itself, how bad is it, and then like kind of, how can you work around it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I wasn't saying just, you can't move your arm, just go roll, like take a few days off, but I definitely was babying it a little. I took 2 weeks off. I could have probably done with just a week at most. And
because sometimes you don't want it to be like, okay, I'm going to take 2 days off, go back, and then that, it's something that you're not really giving respect to, like the injury, and then it turns into like a month or 2 off because something gets worse. Sure. So, yeah.
All right. So our next segment is going to be philosophy with Mike D. So today's Locker Room Philosophers Twitter, which is, X now, it's at the Nogi Yogi. Mike posted this quote from Marcus Aurelius: "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, for the human spirit is colored by such impressions." Again, that's by Marcus Aurelius. So, Mike, lead us in a little guided analysis of that quote.
Yeah, so that was from Marcus Aurelius, the Meditations 5:16. And in Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic book, he has a write-up under here that I'm going to read, and then we can kind of touch on it a little bit more too. So following the quote, the write-up says, "If you bend your body into a sitting position every day for a long enough period of time, the curvature of your spine changes. A doctor can tell from a radiograph whether someone sat at a desk for a living. If you shove your feet into tiny, narrow dress shoes each day, your feet begin to take on that form as well. So the same is true for our mind. If you hold a perpetually negative outlook, soon enough everything you encounter will seem negative. Close it off and you'll become closed-minded. Color it with the wrong thoughts of your life, and your life will be dyed the same. So I think that's that's something that's like around the mind, and like, positive thinking, and just tracking your thoughts, and being a witness of your thoughts and not attaching to them is super important. Very important to me in my life. It's helped me a lot, just dealing with life itself, because we have thousands of thoughts a day, right? Sometimes we don't even realize them; they're just nonstop. So what we choose to feed our mind, and how we choose to look at that, and what we choose to, whether it's like what we're consuming intentionally, or even like feeding our mind from like the environment and being around, certain things, and letting that kind of seep in, right? So you got to watch, not only what you're consuming, but even when you're around negative people, they tend to rub off on you, right? So like if I'm around somebody who's just, their position is usually like negative in general, it to me it starts to make me feel uneasy, honestly. Like I just don't like that energy. And it's more from the position of like, that makes you feel crappy, in my opinion. When I'm always thinking of the negative, and it's not only like, some people think of it like, okay, well, everything isn't all roses and can't be always positive. And it's not even saying that something is only positive, because it's just life is positive, negative, right? It's yin yang. There's always two sides to it, right? So it's just choosing to be aware of the negative, right? Choosing to be aware of these things, but it's just, what are you attaching to, and what are you, what kind of position are you taking? So for me, that quote by Marcus Aurelius is fantastic, because it just gives you, our body the same way, to Ryan Holiday's example that he puts in there. It's one of the reasons why posture is such a big issue with people sitting at desks all day with shitty chairs, walking with shitty shoes, with crappy orthotics, and then, they're having these, foot and ankle issues. Their knees are bad. Our shoes have gotten so much bigger, and the soles are they're just thick. And so it's just like some of these things that we're not super aware of, and our body's starting to, kind of take shape to how we're treating it and what we're doing with it. Same goes with our mind. And it's a great reminder of, making sure that, it's like, it's even affirmations in the morning, even something like that. Every morning, wake up, gratitude. Gratitude gets thrown a lot around, and that's something that, just even if you wake up with gratitude for what you have, for another day to be alive, for your family, your wife, your dogs, your kids, whatever, whatever it is that there's always something you can be grateful for. That right there, to me, it always starts my day off on the right foot. And in terms of like, and then it's like you're prepared for all the crap that comes, because you're gonna hear negative things, you're gonna hear terrible things. It's just life, right? You're gonna hear all these things, but if you prime your mind, it's like priming. So it's like making sure that you're checking your mind, and keeping it on like a positive wavelength, so that even when the negative comes out there and comes, by, it's just like, okay, it's there. I'm not naive to it, but that I'm also not choosing to ride that wave, if you feel what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That I definitely have noticed in the past that when I'm around negative people, you can't help but be negative unless you detach yourself. So the main place I've noticed that is at work, right? When morale is really bad at the different places that I worked. If one person starts talking about how bad the department is, then everybody starts talking about how bad the department is. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you are looking to head to that conversation of why your workplace sucks, then you're going to start seeing everything that sucks about it. And if you're already looking for the negatives of a place, then that's all you're going to see. You're not going to notice all the positives. So I definitely agree with that quote for sure. Marcus Aurelius was obviously a pretty smart dude, and I think he had that one figured out for sure.
Yep, that was his unbiased thought.
All right, so we appreciate that for sure, Mike. You are obviously pretty insightful, and
Thank you, Marcus.
yeah, Marcus. Shout out to Marcus Aurelius. Another thing I wanted to address is we had some good feedback on the Brandon Wilson episode. We've actually been having good feedback on all the episodes so far, so we appreciate all the people that have reached out and given us some positive reactions to the episodes. And it sounds like a lot of people are getting value out of these. So feel free to like and subscribe, as they always say, and then share the episodes with your friends and family. One of the positive reviews was from Josh Johnson, who's a coach at our jiu-jitsu gym. He's a black belt. And he said, he learned a lot, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, it sounds like you're trying to get on the show. And he said that, no, he doesn't have a very interesting story. So just a little background on Josh. He was a school teacher. Then he didn't want to do that anymore and got another job. He's a black belt. He works as like a training coordinator or something for an insurance company. And, even just being a teacher, that gives you plenty of stories, and people can learn a lot from teachers, obviously, because that's their whole job, is to teach people stuff. And there's there's a common misconception out there that you can only learn from people that have these crazy stories or have been through these crazy experiences or are famous or, have a bank account that has a certain number on it or a net worth, that's a certain value. And that's not true. You can learn something from everybody. Everybody has different experiences, and you can learn from how they respond to those experiences. Even if you've had like the exact same life, like even with your siblings, you can learn something from your siblings because maybe their mindset about certain things that you both went through can be completely different, and you can gain some kind of value from that. So that's just kind of a word of encouragement to people out there, is that you don't need to be some world traveler who's done all these crazy things to be able to provide value to people or to teach people things. Everybody has something to share. Everybody has lessons that they've learned that other people can gain value from.
Yeah, and I think the originally, like when we set out to, hey, we're going to make a podcast, it was around, it's like ordinary people or everyday people, right? So it's like the whole thing is like every person is unique, and every person does have their own two eyes with their own perspective, and like what is what's a compelling story or an interesting, it all depends on the person who's receiving it, like, so to me, I've always, like, when we were talking about it earlier, it's like we have, like, every single conversation we have, there's something that you can gain from somebody. So that's where it's just like, it doesn't have to be, to your point, it's just having a conversation and understanding, certain perspectives and understanding people and just learning them, like learning about them, right? And it can be just like, Josh has a lot. I mean, he's a black belt Lions fan as well. So,
yeah, he's learned to deal with a lot of pain and suffering.
Yeah,
for sure.
so he's got, I mean, just that alone, just, I mean, we're at where we're at right now this year, and what the Lions fans have been through. I mean, that's a whole segment in itself. So it's yeah, but there's I think we're all extraordinary, and I think we're all unique, and that's the beautiful thing about being human, is everybody has a different story, a different like experience in life, and what they offer and how it can help. It just depends on who's receiving it and when they're ready to receive it.
Yeah, for sure. So for all you people out there, you should DM at Josh Johnson, AJJ, and encourage him to be confident enough in himself to come on the show, because we'd love to have him. And also, speaking of interesting people, we've got an episode dropping on Friday for all you locker room philosophers out there. We interviewed George Shoney Jr., and he owns a couple powerhouse gym locations. He's a super interesting dude, serial entrepreneur. He's been hustling people out of money since he was a wee lad, as he was telling us the other day. And you guys are definitely going to learn a lot from that episode. So tune in and share this episode with those that you know that will gain some value out of it, which should be everybody. So have a good one. We appreciate you tuning in.
See ya.